Morning, Falcons. Today's maths lesson is going to be about fractions and decimals and converting fractions into decimals, and also thinking about place value. I'm going to go through all of the worksheets with you, but I'm going to start with the red level. So if you know that you're going to be doing the yellow or green level, then please feel free to skip ahead. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to just flick to the yellow, the red worksheet, sorry, and you should be able to see that now on your screen. Right, so you're going to be looking at hundredths on a place value grid. So basically, for the first question here, you have been given these tables, and in them they've placed counters, and basically you've got to write down exactly what you see there as a decimal. Now, don't forget, if there are any blank boxes, you do have to write a 0. So for this first question here, you would write down that there are 0 ones, 0 tenths, and 4 hundredths. So your decimal would look like this, 0.04. Okay, so they're pretty straightforward. Over here, you're going to do the opposite. So they've given you the decimal, and this time you've got to draw the counters in. So we'll look at the first question again. So 0.06, you will draw nothing in the ones, you will draw nothing in the tenths, and you will draw 6 hundredths. Okay, draw them as counters like in question 1. All right, question 3 here. The part whole models, so they've given you the tenths and the hundredths underneath, and you're going to write it as a whole decimal. So there aren't any whole numbers here, so you're going to have 0 point, then you're going to write down how many tenths you've got, which would be 1, and then you're going to write down how many hundredths you've got, which is 4, so 0.14. Over here, they've given you the whole decimal, and they've given you the tenths, and you've got to write down the decimal for how many hundredths there are. Okay, and we can see that there are 7 of those. So there are 4 more of those for you to do. Question 4 here, you've got to complete the sentences. So what I suggest you do here is write down your place value columns. Okay, and then write down your 2 tenths in the tenths column, and we want to know how many hundredths it can be exchanged for. So if you write down a 0 in your hundredths column, you can clearly see on your page that 2 tenths and 0 hundredths is the same as 20. So you're going to write down 20. There are 20 hundredths are the same as 2 tenths. Okay, so have a go at that one. Like I say, write it down as a place value chart. It will be much easier for you then. There's a few part whole models again here. Be careful with those, because this time the tenths aren't the same as the tenths that are shown in the whole decimal. So you've got to work out how many hundredths would make it equal 0.67. And this last one, this problem solving question, you've got 0, 3 and 6, and you've basically got to have a look at the statements from Dexter, Tommy, Esther and Whitney, and you've got to use those cards to answer and to work out what decimal they're thinking of. So Dexter has got a decimal that's the greatest number possible from those digits there. Look where the decimal point is. Okay, Tommy makes the number closest to 4, and then Whitney and Esther choose 2 numbers that are closest together, but Esther's is slightly bigger than Whitney's number. Okay, so I would write down all the possible combinations that you can think of using those 3 cards. Okay, remembering that they've all got ones, tenths and hundredths, and then work out which one fits each of the people there. Okay, so that's the yellow group, the red group, sorry. Yellow, you're working out thousandths as decimals. So this part of this worksheet actually looks much harder than it is. You just need to write down what you see. Okay, so here for question 1, you've got to write down the decimal. They've written it in words. You're writing it as a decimal using a decimal point. 5 ones, 7 tenths, 0 hundredths, and 2 thousandths. Think about where the decimal point needs to go. Obviously, it's got a whole number. It's got 5 ones, but everything else is less than 1. So your decimal point will go after your ones. Now, if there is a 0, like here, 0 hundredths or 0 tenths or 0 thousandths, as you go on through those, make sure you write that 0 down. Okay, don't forget it, don't miss it out or forget to put it in. Right, question 2. This one looks quite tricky, but believe me, it isn't. So writing this as a decimal, 4, let's look at A here, 4 and 514 thousandths. Okay, so write down your place value chart, have a ones column, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. Okay, then I want you to write your 4 in your ones column because we know we've got 4 whole ones. Okay, then 514 thousandths. Okay, so your 4 in your 514 should sit in your thousandths column, which means that your 1 will sit in your hundredths column and your 5 will sit in your tenths column. So your decimal should be 4.514. Okay, so although they look quite tricky, they're pretty straightforward. The last one here, well, actually, the last 3, they will have some zeros in them. So just watch those ones. This one here, you've got a number line and you've got to put those numbers in the correct place. Just convert this last one, this fraction, into a decimal in the same way that we did before. So your 9 will sit in the thousandths, your 3 will be in the hundredths, your 5 will be in the tenths. Then you should have a decimal point and a 0. Okay, and pop those on your number line. This one, you need to write down what number the arrow is pointing at. Write it down as a decimal, which is easier because it is actually on a decimal scale, and then convert your decimal into a fraction. Same for these 2 questions here as well. Question 5, you're going to do some converting. So complete the table first of all. So I would complete all of your fractions and then convert them into decimals. It's going up in ones. Okay, pretty straightforward there. This one, write a decimal to complete the statement. So you've got your tenths, you've got your hundredths, you've got your thousandths. Okay, there's no whole number, so remember you've got to put that in because it is a decimal, so it's going to be 0 point and then this number here. Okay, so have a go at those. Number 7, you need to put the counters into the chart. Okay, so Eva's got 12 plain counters. She makes a number using the place value chart. You're going to come up with 5 numbers that she could possibly make. What's the greatest and the smallest number she can make with all 12 counters? Okay, so you're all going to have different answers for that one. And the last one, Whitney is representing 0.536. Is she correct? So have a look at that section here because she's got 2 lots of thousandths, okay, and then have a look at the numerator as well. And don't forget to explain your answer. So that's your yellow worksheet, and green, finally, fractions to decimals for you. So first of all, right, when we're looking at hundreds, obviously it needs to be on a 100 grid, so it's out of 100. Okay, so if 1 square is shaded, okay, what would that look like out of 100? All right. What is that equivalent to as a decimal? So think about it. Okay, this is a hundredth. So make sure that if you need to draw a place value chart, draw it. Okay, have a look at this one. How much of that out of 100 is shaded? Well, we can see it's exactly half, isn't it? All right, so how many out of 100 would be half? How can you simplify it? How would you write it as a decimal? Over here, the question is, what is the same and what is different about the number lines? Well, they both start at 0 and end at 1, but what can you tell me? What's the difference between them? Okay, it's quite obvious. Just have a quick look at that. Number 3, to convert a fraction to a decimal, you can use equivalent fractions to make the denominator 100. Now, when we're thinking about decimals, you need to make sure that you convert your fraction so that your denominator is either a tenth, 100th, a thousandth, and so on. Okay. So in order to do that, if you've been given the fraction 12/50ths, you need to convert your denominator first. Okay. Now, obviously, you can divide or multiply, but if you divide 50 by 5 to get 10, so that you're working in tenths, you've got to be able to do the same with your 12. So what they've done here is they've multiplied it to make it easier. Okay. So 50 times 2 is 100. So we're working in hundredths. And 12 multiplied by 2 is 24. So that makes our fraction 0.24. Okay, you've got to use that same method. So have a look at it if you're not sure, to convert the following fractions into decimals. All right, in the same way. Some can be converted to have a denominator of 1,000 to find their decimal equivalent. So again, it's just turning the denominator into 1,000th by multiplying by 2. And of course, if you've done it to the denominator, you need to do it to the numerator as well. And then don't forget, if you're looking at thousandths, and you've got 124 thousandths, the 4 sits in the thousandths column, the 2 sits in the hundredths column, and the 1 would sit in the tenths column, which you can clearly see here. Use that same method to convert these ones. Down here, convert the fraction to the decimal equivalent. So this time you've just got to do it yourself. So look at your denominator. Okay, some of them don't need converting. Well, one of them doesn't need converting. The rest of them do, because you need to make sure that they are either tenths, hundredths, or thousandths. Okay, and then over here you've got a problem to sort out. So Alex and Tommy have both got a statement that they believe is correct, and Eva thinks that they're both correct. I want you to have a look and see what you think, and make sure you explain your answer fully. And then finally, a statement here that 0.5 is equivalent to a half, or 5/10ths, or 50/100ths. Are these the only fractions that are equivalent to 0.5? You've got to work out whether you can think of any more. Okay, so just go back to my Teams. Right, okay, so I've gone through all of the worksheets with you today. Don't forget to have a look at the PowerPoint and any videos that I've put on. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, then please just ask. Okay, thank you for watching.